So back in the late 90s when I was learning to scratch, there were no tutorials online. No YouTube, no Instagram, nothing. So it took me years to figure out how to do it properly. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I wish somebody had taught me how to scratch from day one. The fastest, most effective way to actually get good at scratching. My name is Blakey, I'm a DMC champion. Let's get into it. Now the first biggest mistake that I see new DJs make is they're not using the correct sound for the scratch technique that they're trying to perform. Here on the left deck I've got my own scratch sample tool, and if you would like to download it for free so that you can use the same sounds that I'm using in this video, then just check out the link in the description. On this scratch sample tool I've got a mixture of sounds. So the first sound is this. This is the classic scratch sound. This sound is the most versatile out there because it's got enough length to it where you can perform scratches that require a longer sound, but it also has a super percussive beginning. So you can perform short scratches like the chirp scratch. Sound number 2 is a very short sound, and this is perfect for chirps, babies, and stabs. Sound number 3 is similar to the first sound, and I call this the whip sound. And this one is also super versatile. And then sample number 4 is a slowed down version of sample number 1. So this basically makes it a lot longer, which is perfect for practicing scratches like the transformer. And then finally, sound number 5 is a continuous tone. And this is perfect for drilling fader movements. Let's say you want to learn how to perform the crab scratch. It's perfect for that because then you can focus on just the fader movements. Now the first scratch that you should be learning is called the baby scratch. And for this, we're going to use sample number 2. The baby scratch simply involves moving the jog wheel backwards and forwards. Now you can see that I've got my hand around this position here, right when the sound starts. And this is really important. So as long as your hand is around the 9 o'clock position at the beginning of the sound that you're scratching, that is exactly what we want. Anywhere in this area here is perfect. Now the goal with the baby scratch is to make sure that your timing and your rhythm is perfect. So now let's put on an instrumental and let's start practicing the baby scratch to a beat. Make sure that you stay in time with the beat. This is the scratch that you should be practicing before you move on to anything else. Because if you haven't mastered the baby scratch, then moving on to other techniques is just going to be a waste of time. We need to walk before we can run. Once you've practiced the baby scratch enough, then I recommend moving on to what we call the forward scratch. And for this, we introduce the crossfader for the first time. The forward scratch involves you taking your hand off the jog wheel, letting the sound play, and then turning the crossfader off for the backward motion of the record. Let me show you what I mean. So we turn the fader on, we let go of the sound to let it play, and then we put our hand on the jog wheel around this position here, and then crucially we turn the fader off. And then we bring the sound back to the start, and then we repeat the process. Fader on, let the sound play, put your hand here to stop the sound, turn the fader off, and then bring the sound back. Fader on, let the sound play, hand here to stop the sound, fader off, bring the sound back. Because we're introducing the crossfader for the forward scratch, at first this is probably going to be quite tricky to get right. But what you'll find is with enough practice, you're going to pick up these techniques super quick. Every technique starts with frustration, but very quickly moves on to the payoff of learning a new scratch. That's why it's super important that you stick with your practice. And if you want to learn scratching properly with a clear structure, drills, and step-by-step guidance, then you should check out my Ultimate Scratching course. It has over 90 lessons, and it will teach you everything that you'll ever need to know about scratching and turntablism. If you want to check it out, then just hit the link in the description. Now, the next scratch technique that I recommend moving on to after that is the chirp scratch. And the chirp scratch is one of my favorite scratches of all time because it sounds great and it's super fun to do. So for this scratch, we're going to use sound number 1. And the reason we're using this sound is it has the perfect percussive beginning to the sound. Now, before I explain how to do the chirp scratch, let's take a listen to what it sounds like over an instrumental. Now, the chirp scratch is actually the same hand movement as the baby scratch. You're simply moving the sound backwards and forwards. But the fader movement is the crucial part of the chirp scratch. So for the chirp scratch, we actually begin with the fader open and we push the sound forward, but before we get to the end of the forward push, we turn the fader off like this. And now we do the same thing in reverse. So we pull the sound back to the start and we turn the fader on just before we get to the start of the sound. So let's do that a few times. Once you start practicing the chirp scratch, you'll see that there's a rhythm to performing it correctly. And with enough practice, you're going to naturally fall into the rhythm of how the record hand and the fader hand are supposed to move in tandem. Let's do it again. So don't forget, the fader starts open. You have your hand around this position on the jog wheel right at the start of the sound. You push the sound forward and then you close the fader and then you bring the sound back and you turn the fader on before you get to the start of the sound. If you stick with these 3 techniques and practice them until you can perform them flawlessly, then you're going to be in a great position to move on to some more advanced techniques. Another mistake that I see new DJs make all the time when they're learning to scratch is they try and focus on speed rather than flow. Speed is always the thing that comes last. Getting your flow and timing right is way more important. Once you have the technique down perfectly, that's when you can start working on speed. But honestly, I'd always rather listen to a scratch DJ that has great flow and timing than a DJ who can perform really intricate scratches quickly. Because in my opinion, it just sounds better. Here's an example of how you can practice your flow, rhythm, and timing using the 3 techniques that I just showed you. Every beginner DJ wants to scratch faster, but that's actually the worst thing that you can work on when you're just starting out. What they don't realize is that every fast scratch that you hear only sounds clean because the DJ built years of flow and timing first. If your scratches don't sound good slow, then they're definitely not going to sound good fast. So focus on simple techniques done with precision and control and perform them at a speed which is comfortable for the level that you're at. Not only is this going to make you a better scratch DJ in the long run, but it's also going to make your scratches sound way cleaner and way more pro. Now, a question I get asked all the time by my scratch students is about hand placement on the jog wheel, and also at what angle they should hold their hand, how much force they should apply. So let's go over that. You always want your hand to be around the 9 o'clock position at the beginning of the sound that you're scratching. So that would be perfect. But something else that is super important is you need to make sure that your hand is nice and relaxed on the jog wheel. Having a relaxed hand is going to allow you to have a lot more control and dexterity over the sound, and it's actually going to improve your flow and your timing. Now, a drill that always helps my students is to perform what we call a very slow drag on the sound. So get your hand around the 9 o'clock position at the start of the sound, turn the fader on, and then very, very slowly drag the sound forward, keeping your hand on the jog wheel, like that, and then just as slowly bring the sound back. To perform this cleanly, you have to have a relaxed hand. And that's why this drill is so good at improving the amount of tension you apply to the jog wheel. If you were to have a stiff and a tense hand, it would be very difficult to perform this drill. So now let's try this over a beat, and we're going to drag the sound forward and back and try and do it perfectly in time with the beat. If you start practicing this drill, you will be amazed at how much it improves your overall control and flow with the sound. Most DJs try to skip to advanced combos, but that is exactly what slows down progress. The fastest way to get good is to start with simple, repeatable patterns and then just practice them until they sound perfect. So right now, I'm going to give you 3 scratch patterns that you can practice that are going to make you improve in no time. For this first pattern, we're going to be performing the baby scratch, and we're going to be using sample number 2 on my free scratch tool. Practicing this beginner drill is going to massively improve your baby scratches. And for drill number 2, we're going to be practicing the forward scratch. And for drill number 3, we're going to be working on our chirp scratches. more you repeat a pattern, the more it's going to get burned into your muscle memory. And that's what frees you up creatively later to move on to more advanced scratch techniques. It's just like learning an instrument. Nobody tries to solo on day one. You repeat scales, you repeat chords until your hands, they just move automatically. And it's exactly what I teach in depth inside my Ultimate Scratching course. Now, if you want to learn how to take the scratch techniques that you've learned and apply them to a real DJ set using popular tracks, then I recommend you check out this video right here where I break it all down in detail.